Hello, all of you fellow fans of Christopher Manson's book Maze. This is Bill M. with another commentary on Maze, and it's been a while since I did a commentary on specific rooms and studying them for clues on picking the correct door. So let's do that this time. I'm going to do some on some rooms that I have not addressed yet. So let's start with the obligatory overview. Remember that the main challenge of Christopher Manson's book Maze was find the shortest path from room 1 to the center of the maze, which is room 45, and back. So let's ignore stuff like the riddle and things for now. I already did a 3-part commentary on that. When it comes time to the rooms that are on the shortest path, I have done some videos on some of those rooms, but not all of them yet. And there's a particular sequence of rooms I'd like to cover this time. That's from room 30 to room 42 to 4, and then from there to room 29. So if you were to look at every possible path from 1 to 45, just 1 to 45, let's ignore the 45 back to 1 for the moment. If you were to look at just every possible path you can take from 1 to 45, and we only consider what are called mathematically simple paths, so, in other words, we're not redundantly returning to a room we've already visited on our trip and going back out again. So it turns out that there are only 4 paths, 4 unique paths from 1 to 45, and all of them end with the following sequence of rooms: 42 to 4 to 29, 17, and then finally 45. Now, maybe this will be an example of clues in a series of rooms relating to each other, because remember, it does say that in the directions of Maze, that clues in a series of rooms may relate to one another and may indicate a path. Maybe that will be the case here. So let us begin here with room 30. Let me read the dialogue here. Room number 30. "What a beautiful door. The others are so plain," said one. "It's meant to influence our decision," said another. "Perhaps this has been done so we will not choose this door," said the thoughtful one. They wanted to know what the letters meant. Obviously, they meant something, and I said so. "Yes, but why O and U? What special significance can they have for us?" The more confused they became, the more I enjoyed it. No matter how many times I've been through this, I'm always fascinated. Leaving the room and all that it contained behind us, we entered, and that's where the dialogue ends. Taking a closer look at room 30, out of the 4 doors that we have choices for, 34 is really the only truly bad door. That is a one-way door, one-way exit to the loop rooms. The other 3 doors, still only one is the best choice and the one that we need for the shortest path, but there are ways of at least getting back to the room. Now, 15 has an arrow pointing to it. If you look at that, there's an arrow there on the floor, the fallen minute hand of the clock, it would seem. So our instinct might say, ooh, go there, but I don't know. Room 5 also has a sign in front of it with an arrow. So my reasoning for picking the correct door, I would say the main clue is that you pick 42. That's the answer, because it's the odd one out. It's, that principle, again, of picking a correct door by process of elimination. So 34 is kind of a grandiose door. 5 and 15 both have arrows pointed to it. And 42 is kind of this boring door with nothing special about it. So it's the one that's the most different from the others. Therefore, you pick that. That was my reasoning. Years ago, when I showed this book to a friend, he noticed that if you hold the book upside down, those letters O and U become the word no. And if you follow the no, you can carry that on to 42, just like the sign is saying no, and go to the right. And I've run into some other fans of Maze who have come up with something similar, some kind of similar play on the OU upside down being no. For some more about the letters O and U, I would say go listen to my commentary on the riddle. But also going back to the last clip I had, think about how would you encode 42 if you were to do that, as a clue, you're making a book. Well, I don't know about you, but when I think 42, I think Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I think Douglas Adams. And that makes me think, Douglas Adams? Adam? Adam and Eve? We got Eve, we got an apple tree here. All right, seems like kind of a stretch, but I'm just throwing it out there because it's something that came to mind. I'm also thinking like, well, if I wanted to indicate that door, maybe I would put some kind of reference to going left, like the word anagram somewhere, or some kind of reference like that. Unfortunately, I have not been able to find anything like that in the dialogue. But let's take an even closer look at room 30. In the middle of the room, we've got this fake tree and what looks like a giant watch. One of the hands is falling down, and instead of the numbers 1 through 12, we've got letters. And some fans have interpreted that as, well, you have a tree, and the hour hand of this clock is pointing to an F. So you have tree, F, hour. Well, you rearrange those letters slightly, you get 3-4. The words 3-4, which kind of indicates 34. Likewise, if we look at this sign, if no Eve, well, that's actually an anagram. You rearrange those letters, you get 1-5. And 1-5 is one of the exits. Some other fans have pointed out that, well, you have this no Eve and you have this apple tree. It kind of brings to mind Adam, and Adam sounds like a homophone for add them, Adam, go add them up. And if you look at the 3 letters in the room, the giant O and the U and the F, and you use alphanumeric substitution where A equals 1, B equals 2, and so on, you add those up and you get 42. And other reasoning is that, well, 34 is mentioned and 15 is mentioned because of the 1-5, but also because of 1-5, that means 5 is mentioned too. So you take the door that isn't mentioned in any of these references, which is the door to 42. Now, how about the CD-ROM game? As I've pointed out before, the CD-ROM game, Riddle of the Maze, has some things that are animated and things that you can click on that they say are important. Certain objects are important and become alive when you click on them, I think is what they say. Well, for this room on the CD-ROM game, if you click on the clock, the hand spins all the way around. It's an animation. And a curious thing I noticed also in the CD-ROM game is that if you leave the room and come back, the apples are not all shiny red. They're a little duller. So I don't know if there was an extra animation somewhere that I just haven't found yet that does something with the apples. But anyway, just putting that information out there. Okay, now some additional ideas that I've read about or thought about or, some mentioned elsewhere. So with the apple tree and the if no Eve, there's, of course, this theme, it seems, going on with the Garden of Eden story from the book of Genesis. Some people have pointed out that, the tree of apples and the 34, it's kind of like the temptation theme. I was curious if 34 or one of, these numbers might have some kind of biblical reference, chapters and verses. Genesis 3:5 and not 3:4 is the line about your eyes will be opened. The serpent tells them if they eat the fruit. And 34, coincidentally enough, does have an eye theme if you go into that room. Other people have pointed out that the minute hand, if you look at the way it's fallen down and pointing, well, that's kind of, it looks like the male sign, the biological male sign. So there's another reference to Adam. Okay, fine, but I don't really see how that helps in figuring out the door is 42. I saw somebody in the comments of Into the Abyss saying, well, it's an analog stopwatch. It's not just a clock. And I would say, no, it could just be a pocket watch. Stopwatches, if you look at analog stopwatches, usually have a reset button. Maybe they have a third button on top, not just one. So, I mean, maybe that little turn dial on the top is just there to make it clear that this is a clock of some kind. Not just some kind of barometer or something else. I've also heard some fans say, well, the F is near where the 42-second mark would be, or the 40, on the stopwatch, or a 42-minute mark on a clock. No, actually, if you do the math of dividing the letters there, it's more like 37 and a half, which is closer to 34. And I've seen other people do all other sorts of math to try to get 42. Some sounds a little more credible than other approaches. The group is described in the text as being confused, and some fans have said, well, that kind of brings to mind the idiom at sixes and sevens, the idea of being confused. Okay. And some people further take that by saying the clock is, it represents time, so 6 times 7 is 42. Sixes and sevens. So other people have pointed out, well, the F alphanumerically is 6. It's the sixth letter of the alphabet. And if we can find some way to get 7 out of it, that way we can get 42, because 42 is 6 times 7. Some people have said, okay, there are like the 7 remaining letters in the clock. Other people have pointed out there are 7-letter Fs in the text. I thought that was interesting. And like I said, some methods sound more plausible than others. If you go to into the abyss in the comments, you can find all sorts of wild theories people have. I have also heard people say, well, you can draw a line separating the 10 apples on the tree with the 3 on this side and the 7 on there. And I don't know. Again, seems like a real stretch. Again, there are so many different speculations I've read about this room, but let's just go on to the next one. Room 42, and here's the dialogue. The next room. In one corner, a savage animal appeared, ready to leap out, roaring, rending with tusk and claw. But it was only a bit of taxidermy after all. I suggested they might wish to hang up their coats before going on. How will we find them? One asked. We might not pass through here again. I assured them I would help them to return. You can count on me, I said sincerely. Still, they wouldn't leave anything behind. Opening one of the doors, we made our way to... and that's where the dialogue ends. Room 42 is one of those rooms that I think has a clue hidden in plain sight, and that is there are 4 boots in the front center of the room, and the correct exit to take is the one to room 4. There are also 4 feet of the bear you can find up in the top right of the picture. Some fans have said that they're kind of positioned to kind of look like a number 4. Well, in any case, I think there are other distractions in the room, and sometimes if you're looking at the room, you're kind of focused on the posters, and you might not even notice the 4 boots that are there together. Now, another clue, I think, is the bear is on over this sign that says sinners this way, and saints that way. So room 30, which we just came from, has the Eve and the apple themes, so kind of a sinner theme. Also next to the exit back to room 30 is the trap exit to room 22, whereas the bear's elbow says saints that way, and 4 is the correct door. So that's my interpretation. There are other interpretations people have had of the sign, thinking like, well, maybe it's an anagram, maybe it means ain't that way, inner this way, or something. I haven't really found anything convincing about that. Somebody from Mazecast, though, when they did a commentary in this room, pointed out that there's the line in the dialogue, you can count on me, and if you count the 4 letters, on me, O-N-M-E, you get the number 4 that way. I think that's a legitimate clue. And I've noticed there's some seemingly related themes on this part of the path, because we had room 26 with the devils, and then we went from there to room 30, and we had the Garden of Eden, and we're here in room 42 with these saints and sinners sign. Some have suggested that the pair of dice on one of the doors is paradise. Again, I'm not really sure how that really connects or helps with anything. Now, the CD-ROM game for this room had a couple of animations and some things you can click on. The boots animate. the left pair shuffles and shuffles away, then the right pair does that. If you click on the bear, the mouth, it exposes the teeth, and the bear growls. And you click on the elephant leg, the elephant makes an elephant trumpeting noise. As for the significance with the elephant bucket, I had some theories on that over in my commentary with the riddle. But anyway, we do see kind of the reinforcement, I think, with the boots. So I think that's good. Regarding those posters that are on the doors, at least the doors that are closed, some fans have pointed out that the posters are all pairs of some kind. So on the left hand, you have a pair of scissors. Then you have the salt shaker and the pepper grinder. They kind of go together as a pair. Then you have PEAR, the fruit pair, and then a pair of dice. And some people have tried to say, oh, well, you take the one that's not a real pair, which is the salt and pepper. Okay, why that, though? Why wouldn't you just take the PEAR? Isn't that one not the real pairs? For that matter, wouldn't you just take the door with no poster, which is back to 30? I think this is just some bad rationalizations people make. I personally think the posters more so relate to the riddle, and again, see my clip on the riddle of the maze about that. Or maybe to call attention to the pair of boots, because again, you have those 2 pairs of boots, and 4 is the correct answer. Also, the scissors, well, they're kind of dangerous in the pair, and curiously enough, that marks the trap room, so maybe there's something there. And this is one room that has umbrellas and top hats, and those are recurring objects we see in a lot of rooms in Maze. And what that really means, I don't know. I have some kind of theories. I'll make another clip one of these days talking about that. Curiously enough, this is one of the rooms where the top hat is not associated with the correct door. In a lot of other cases, it is. Again, something I'll talk about some other time. I've also seen some fans talk about the lone boot that is outside of the 4, and some have wondered if is the match for the lone boot that's broken and in room 38. I don't know. Seems like it might be 2 different style boots. But in any case, I don't see how this really helps either way. The poster with a pair of dice, there's an obviously wrong number on the bottom, like we see 2 faces marked as 1. And some people have done different math on this to try to justify 4. They say, oh, well, that's the wrong one, and you add those up and you get 4. Yeah, okay, but I noticed that, well, if you add both of them, the dice are cubes, you get 6 and 4. 64 is the cube, the mathematical cube of 4, so maybe that's a clue. Again, you can find countless speculations about what is or isn't a clue in this room, so let's just move on to the next room. We take the exit to room 4, and this is what we see next. The Great Hall of Many Doors. What a foolish face, I snorted. Pay no attention. A sound made them all turn suddenly. A small black cat ran out of a door to my right, sniffed at us, and before I could move, ran out of the hall. It was fortunate that I was still standing with the rest of them, or they might have noticed. Faint voices came down one of the corridors. Shall we toss a coin? I asked, or have you made up your minds? They hadn't made up their minds, and they had no coins. By a process of elimination, they decided to go to some general information about room 4. So room 4 is the room in Maze with the most number of exits, and we actually enter room 4 twice along the shortest path. We do it once on our way to room 45, and we re-enter this room again on our way back from 45 to 1. So technically speaking, this room has 2 correct doors. And out of the 7 exits, there are 3 trap room doors, 2 loop room doors, and 2 path room doors. So obviously the 2 path room doors end up being the correct ones. So it's a matter of which ones do you pick and which ones do you pick first. Many items here, I would say, relate to the riddle, so far as I've been able to tell. Some might refer to both the riddle and which door to pick, too. But again, see my clip on the riddle of the maze for talking about the riddle. And the guide in the dialogue says, pay no attention, to the face. So presumably he means the sun. And in this case, the sun is actually bad. because it's over room 11, and room 11 is a trap room. In some other rooms, the sun indicates a good door, but this is one of the cases where it doesn't. And also, I did say a while back that usually the guide, when he talks to the group about something, he's usually trying to mislead them. But in this case, the guide's advice is strangely correct. Because if we take room 11, that is a trap. So when it comes to the CD-ROM game, for room 4, there's an animation, that hand torch that's on the upper right in the front between the axis at 24 and 43. It nudges towards 43. I talked about this in the commentary I did on the riddle. And 43 is a trapdoor, so presumably it's nudging to the maze poster that's inside there, and that's related to the riddle. So some other things in the CD-ROM game, if you click on the axe or any of the wood, you hear a chop sound. It's like a single chopping sound. If you click on the candle, there's like a lighted match sound. Now, we're told in the dialogue a black cat runs out from the right of the room. So to me, I always took that as don't go to anything on the right, because you don't want to cross the path of the black cat. That's bad luck. So that kind of eliminates a lot of the doors. Now, the guide says, shall we toss a coin? So that would imply there are 2 rooms they're trying to think of and trying to toss a coin to pick one or the other. So toss a coin for heads or tails. Well, that indicates a split decision. And if we look at the room, we see that there's an axe splitting some wood. And notice that the axe spans doors 29 and 15. Interestingly enough, the head of the axe, the metal part, is on 29. The tail is over 15. So we talk about flipping a coin, heads or tails, a split decision. We can go to heads first. Heads at 29, the tail at 15. So we take 29 on our way to 45. We take 15 on our way back, but that is the correct door to take here on our way to 45, 29. And that is, I believe, the best reasoning for it. And just some final things I'll say about room 4. There is a gavel in the front. There was talk about hammering you can hear in one of the other rooms. Usually don't see a gavel used for hammering like that. Usually a gavel you think is symbolic for decision-making. And this one has 2 nails behind it on a piece of wood, and it also points to the 2 exits. So I think this was done on purpose. The dialogue also mentions faint voices. Maybe those are the future voices when they revisit the room from 39, because if you read the dialogue in 39, the group is saying, I hear some hammering. No, that's a chopping sound. So as always, as with every room, people have other theories ranging from the plausible to the ridiculous. You can see the comments on intotheabyss.net. Go to that site for page 4 and read. Also, see my commentary clips number 6, 7, and 10 for the rest of the rooms of the first half of The Shortest Path. So with that, I have done commentaries now on every room on the first half of The Shortest Path. Still lots of rooms that I have not covered in the book, and I will be doing that in upcoming clips. Thank you for listening.